So I wonder what comes to mind when you think about heaven. What images, what thoughts, what colors, what words come to mind? So if you've read the Bible, if you've read the word of Jesus, then you should have a very clear depiction, a very clear understanding of what heaven is. Because Jesus says things like this: heaven is like a kingdom. He says it's like a king, it's like a vineyard, it's like a place where moth and rust do not destroy. It's like a house with many rooms. It's like a dragnet. It's like some yeast. It's like a mustard seed. And if you don't have a clear picture of what heaven is after that, I can't help you. No, really, the Bible talks a lot about heaven, but it doesn't give us maybe the most clear picture that we would like. And so what happens is we start to fill in the gaps a little bit with sort of cultural understanding, some kind of mildly biblical allusions, and we kind of put that all together to get our mental image of heaven. So we think of the proverbial pearly gates, and we think of streets of gold, and we think of an ethereal place in the clouds that looks unlike anything earthly. We get these images from culture, and then we get images, let's be honest, from the number one place that we talk about heaven, which is funerals. Right? I would guess that a lot of your image of what you think of what heaven is was probably shaped by a funeral. So you go to a funeral, and the old country preacher goes up there, and those old country preachers kind of always pull one of these, and they say, "Oh, Uncle Jimmy's up there right now in the lakes of heaven, and he's fishing. And every catch is a 5-pound bass," right? And so we think, is that what it is? Or if we could be honest, I got to untuck my shirt a little bit. If we could be honest here, maybe you've just thought of heaven as kind of a really long worship service. Some of you are like, that sounds great. And some of you are like, a little boring, man. So here's the deal. Last week, I spent about 34 minutes trying to convince you that hell is a real place. I tried to convince you that based on our Western understanding that we don't like that, and that may not feel good, but that doesn't mean that hell is not a real place. I had to convince you last week that hell existed, and that matters. This week, I don't think I have to convince you that heaven is real. In fact, 3 out of 4 Americans of all religious flavors and stripes believe in a place called heaven. 92% of Christians say the same thing. I believe in a literal place called heaven. And if you're one of those 8%, let's talk afterward. But I would guess for most of us, I don't have to convince you that heaven exists. Instead, my goal today, my purpose today is to try to convince you that heaven is a place that you want to be. The author Randy Alcorn, who kind of wrote the seminal passage, the seminal text, the seminal book on heaven, oddly enough called Heaven, said this: Satan need not convince us that heaven doesn't exist. He need only convince us that heaven is a place of boring, unearthly existence. So if the image that you have in your mind of heaven is like okay, but not that great, I hope today we're gonna work together through scripture, through reason, and see and catch an image, a glimpse of somewhere that you really want to be, because your idea about heaven and what it is, your picture of heaven is going to directly correlate to how desperately you want to go there. And here's what we're gonna see. I've already kind of made a joke that the Bible gives a lot of allusions and images and metaphors about heaven. We're gonna talk a lot about the Bible. But what's true about heaven is true about what I've said throughout this entire series. That if you were here for week 1, what I told you is that God has put eternity into your heart. He has designed your heart in such a way that you will want to desire to be in heaven with him forever. I said you are a citizen of heaven, and when you look around at this world and you think there's so much pain, there's so much brokenness, there's so much sin and things that I don't understand, when there are so many problems around and you don't feel like you're at home, you feel like you were made for a perfect place, that's because you were. And so when we talk about heaven, the way I'm gonna talk about it here today, I'm gonna show you that all of your core appetites, all of your core desires that God has put within you will be fully and completely met in heaven. Because here's what we know. All of those needs, all of those wants, all of those desires of your human heart will never be fully met on earth. No amount of money, no amount of power, no amount of authority, no amount of relationships will ever satiate your soul completely. Okay, prime example of this, and maybe some of you can relate. There are occasions when the lottery jackpot gets high enough that I, a sinful man, decide that might be a good time to support the local schools, because that's what the money goes to, right? And so, save your emails, I'm a sinner, I'm acknowledging it, I may or may not go buy some lottery tickets. Okay, only when it gets to a certain amount, and you've done it too, you sinner. So if you're a sinner like me and you've done that before, you know what happens after you buy that ticket. You go home and your mind starts going wild. You may sit as a family, you may sit with your spouse and talk about all the things that you would do. And so the very, very few times that we have done this, that's what Alex and I do. We sit and we start to daydream. Oh my gosh, with $1 billion, could you imagine all the things that we could do? Could you imagine the houses that we could build, the land we could buy, the cars we would drive, the charities we would start, right? We start thinking of all the people that are part of the church that we would just bless with some money, not you, Charles, but a lot of you, we would just give you lots of money. And then what happens is we kind of start to play this out a little bit. I'm like, well, we want some land, so we'd go buy land, we'd build a really big house out there, but then what would I do? Would I still preach? Like, God has called me to this, so should I do that? Aha, here's the deal. I will volunteer. I won't even take a salary from the church. I'll just show up and preach when I want to, which probably won't be that much because, I'll be traveling, but okay, that's what God, okay, well, we'll be mostly out at the ranch, but then if we get, my wife's an extrovert, so she might miss some people, so then maybe we buy a house in the city too, and then we got to make sure that they're close enough. And we end up getting to a point where we're like, with all the taxes and everything, I hope we don't win. Okay, spoiler alert, we haven't yet. But what do I say that? Because I could have all the money in my mind to do everything that I've ever wanted, and even in my most perfect scenario, there's something wrong. There's something missing. And that something wrong, that need that is not met, I believe points us to what will be in heaven, completion and perfection. Okay, so 2 disclaimers this morning. I gave 3 last week, so I'm getting better. 2 disclaimers this morning. The first one is this: I've never been to heaven. Okay, I've read the Bible, I've read some accounts of near-death experiences and people kind of experiencing heaven, which we can talk about that. I still don't really know how I feel about those things, but I've studied this, but I've never been there. And because I've never been there, and because the Bible does not give us really crystal clear anything about heaven, you're gonna hear a primary word today to a lot of the the hypothetical questions that I ask. That word is maybe. Okay, we're gonna have crowd participation later. You're gonna say that, but remember, you're gonna hear a lot of maybe today. Second disclaimer is this, and this is kind of a theological aside. So when the Bible says the word heaven, uses the concept of heaven, the Bible all throughout Old and New Testament is referring to 2 separate but similar places. Stick with me. There's one place called the present heaven, and that's a place where we believe that we will go after we breathe our last breath. You believe in Jesus, he's Lord of your life, you breathe your last earthly breath, your next heavenly breath is in the present heaven. Perfect peace, perfect, beautiful presence of Jesus there. Okay, that's the present heaven. When Jesus is on the cross and he leans over to the robber beside him and says, "Today you will be with me in paradise," that's an echo of the present heaven. And the Bible calls the present heaven, heaven. Then there's a second separate but similar category, a different existence called the new heavens and the new earth. This is the future heaven. Okay, so the new heavens and the new earth we see in Revelation, we see images of all throughout the scriptures. This happens after Jesus returns, which we'll talk about in a couple weeks. After Jesus returns, inaugurates the final of all things, the new heavens and the new earth are created. In the new heavens and the new earth, we have a bodily existence. Okay, so present heaven, we're spirits, and the new heavens and the new earth, our souls are reunited with our bodies, and it is everything we have here just remade and perfect. Do you know what the Bible calls that place? Heaven. Okay, so present heaven, future heaven, interchangeable in the Bible, interchangeable here today, and we'll talk more about that here in a couple weeks when we talk about the end times. But remember, heaven is heaven because all of your deep needs are met. All of the appetites that God has created you with are fully and perfectly and completely met, and that's what makes it so incredible. So what we're gonna do for the rest of our time this morning, I'm gonna talk about 3 needs that you have. 3 deep gut level needs that you have and that every single human being throughout all civilizations in all places has had, and show you how each of those needs, each of those appetites are met in heaven. The first thing to note is this: in heaven, we will have a place. In heaven, we will have a place, not just a physical place, which we will, but really a place of belonging. See, here's what I know about you, because it's true about every human that's ever existed. You were made for connection with other people. Humans are a deeply tribal species. All throughout time and all places, we naturally group up around tribes and around cultures and around families, around languages. We create things that knit us together because we want to be with one another. Even the most introverted person, you have a deep core need to be with other people. Why? Because you were made in the image of a communal God. I've told you this before, but you were made in the image of God. That means God's mark is on you. And one of those marks is that God is three persons in one. It's what we call the Trinity, a great mystery of our faith. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, co-equally and co-eternally forever. You were made in that image, which means that you were made for community. And you don't have to study textbooks to know this. This is just true. Go to a high school cafeteria. Okay, very quickly you see that people will start to match up with one another. You got the jocks, you got the cheerleaders, you got the nerds, you got the geeks, you got the anti-establishment kids that even they don't like being around other people, but they still group together somehow. You were made for connection. And then what happens is so much of the anxiety we experience, especially as young people, but we never really grow out of it, is wondering, do I have a place? Do I belong with these group of people? Does he like me? Does she like me? What do they say behind my back? We constantly struggle with finding our place. The good news is that in heaven, we will have a place. We will fully and freely and forever belong. Look what Jesus says in John chapter 14. He says, "Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way to where I am going." And then Thomas, who we loved here at Loft, doubting Thomas, says, "Hey, Jesus, we don't really know where you're going. How can we know the way? Give us a map." Jesus says to him in verse 6, "I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." So a couple of quick things here about this passage. And if you've ever been to a funeral, especially in the Methodist family, you have probably heard this passage read before. Two really quick things. The first is this: Jesus tells us how to get to heaven. Jesus doesn't say good people go to heaven. Jesus doesn't say people who try really hard and believe in something go to heaven. Jesus doesn't say the people that really maximize their own self-worth and live their best lives go to heaven. He says, no one comes to the Father, no one goes to this house except through me. The way to heaven is through Jesus. Second thing Jesus says is that I've gone to prepare a house. He gives this image of this great big house, a place where there are many rooms. And let me tell you on this note, I usually preach from the English Standard Version Bible, and I could give you reasons why, but it would bore most of you. But the ESV here, the translation's wrong. Okay? And if you're reading from an NIV, that's wrong too. A King James Version, that's all wrong too. The reason is that we don't have a really good translation in the English for this word that we translate as you. Okay, when Jesus says, "I'm going to prepare a place to you," it ain't you, it's y'all. Really, in Greek and seminary, they made us translate this as y'all. It's the second person, it's multiple people, it's a plural. Jesus doesn't say, hey, you little special snowflake, I'm going to prepare a heaven cell for you and you get to be there with me and just the two of us forever. He says, no, I'm going to prepare a place for y'all, and there are so many rooms. It's gonna be a big old party. In heaven, you will belong. You will be with other people and you won't ever wonder, do they love you? Because they do. Now, a similar question along these lines that I'm often asked about heaven is this: will we be married in heaven? Okay, I want to unpack this question a little bit, but I've already given you the answer. Will we be married in heaven? Maybe. One of you was listening. Great. Maybe. So let's talk about a couple biblical truths that we know about heaven. The first is this: we will recognize one another in heaven. Okay, I firmly believe that to be true. In 1 Thessalonians 4, the so-called rapture passage, Paul is encouraging people who have lost loved ones, who have gone on before to the present heaven, and he says, hey, take heart, have hope. We're gonna be caught up in the air. You're gonna see and recognize one another. In Luke 15, Jesus tells a story about Lazarus and about a rich man. And he talks about how they recognize each other here on earth, and then in the afterlife, they recognize each other again. I believe that we will recognize one another in heaven. I believe that you will see that loved one again. Fully, I believe that with all my heart and soul. But the question still remains, will we be married in heaven? Some of y'all are like, I was really looking forward to that whole death do us part thing. I sure hope not. That's some of you. So not me, Alex, not me, right? Well, let's talk about this. So there's a passage that deals directly with this in the Gospels. It's Matthew chapter 22. And in Matthew chapter 22, there's this group of religious scholars, religious authorities called the Sadducees. And the reason they're so sad, you see, is that they don't believe. Thank you. Be here all morning. The reason that the Sadducees were so sad is that they didn't believe in the physical resurrection. This was a marked part of their theology. They did not believe in a physical resurrection. And so they come up to Jesus and they say, hey, rabbi boy, resurrection man, answer this one. They say, let's say hypothetically here, a guy and a gal get married. Okay, and they go off and it's a great marriage, but they don't have any kids, and then suddenly, guy dies. And they say, Jesus, you know the rules. You know what the law of Moses says. The law of Moses says that if a brother dies and that brother has another brother, then to protect that widow, they have to get married. So they say, what happens if that happens and they get married and they don't have any kids? And then guess what? That guy dies too. They say, well, and then another brother marries and that guy dies too. 7 times, and nobody gets the clue, right? Like, come on, guys, you got to figure out something's wrong here, right? He says 7 times this woman marries a guy who dies. Again, none of them got the hint. I don't understand that part of the story of a hypothetical law. But they say, hey, resurrection man, if you believe in the resurrection, if you believe in eternal life, if you believe in heaven, who's she going to be married to? The first guy? The last guy? All 7? Like, who's it gonna be? And here's what Jesus says in Matthew 22:30. He says, for in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. So will we be married in heaven? Maybe. Here's what I will say. I hope we're married. I think the Bible gives enough wiggle room that could be the case. I would love to see Alex again one day in heaven, but I know that if I don't see her there and if I am not married to her there, I won't miss her. If we're not married in heaven, you're not going to be up there missing your spouse and wishing that you had that because you're not going to have any of those emotions. Perfect belonging, perfect connection, forever, all eternity. I sure hope we're married in heaven, but if we're not, I won't miss it. And one of the main reasons for that is that not only will we have connection and deep belonging with other people in heaven, but really the primary characteristic of heaven is that Jesus is there. God has created you with a desire to be in relationship with Jesus. That's the purpose of it. And in heaven, that need, that deep appetite for relationship with him will be fully and completely and perfectly met. And listen, we could stop the conversation about heaven right there because that's all we need. But out of a great grace and out of a great love for you, God doesn't stop there. That's not the only need that's met. Number 2 is this: in heaven, there will be no pain. We have a core appetite for pleasure. We have a core desire, a core need to avoid pain. And really, if you think about it, a lot of what we do every day is to avoid pain. We eat so we're not hungry. We drink so we're not thirsty. We go to the doctor, we go to the dentist. Some weirdos eat kale because they don't want to have any pain. Okay, we spend a lot of time trying to avoid pain because we were made for pleasure. The good news is that in heaven, there will be no pain. Listen to this: no physical pain. No Alzheimer's, no ALS, no diabetes, no cancer, no broken bones, no cuts, no sores, none of that. There will be no physical pain, but there will be no emotional pain either. No heartache, no sadness, no sorrow, no mourning, no grief, no guilt, no shame. This is how John describes it in Revelation 7. He gets a picture of heaven. It says, therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. They shall neither hunger no more, neither thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd, and he will guide them into springs of living water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Remember, the metaphors used about heaven are meant to point to deeper truths. So when he says you're not gonna hunger, you're not gonna thirst, the sun won't beat down on you, and there will be no reason to cry, that's pointing to the fact that every pleasure need you have will be met fully in heaven. Now, another question that I'm asked is this: well, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but if it's about pleasure, if it's about enjoying ourselves and enjoying the presence of God forever, then what are we gonna do? Because let's be honest, we have different things that we enjoy and bring us pleasure and bring us joy. Okay, a few months ago, I got to go up, it was a bucket list thing for me. I got to go up to Trinity, Texas and play a little golf course called Whispering Pines. Okay, some dudes are nodding here, okay? This place is immaculate. Okay, the food was incredible. The scenery was incredible. You felt like you were in a different world. The greens rolled perfect. The sand was nice. The fairways were perfect. My buddies told me that. I was in the rough, but even the rough was really nice. Like, I get home and I say, Alex, babe, I tell her all these things. The food, I played terribly, but I had so much fun. This place was amazing. I said, I went to heaven today. And she didn't say this, but we've been married long enough, I can look at her in her eyes and read this. When I said, I went to heaven today, she said it with her eyes, that feels like the other place to me. Right, think about it. We have different things that we like to do. You might like to golf and fish like me. You might like to bake and to do puzzles and to garden and to read. I don't know what you like to do, but I know that God has made us all unique. So if that's the case, then how can we do all those things in heaven? Or put another way, will we golf in heaven? Will we fish in heaven? Will we bake cookies in heaven? Will we garden in heaven? To which my answer is maybe. Maybe. But if we don't, we won't want to. A lot of the reasons we do things like that is to give us some escape from a little bit of pain. Maybe the pain that work brings us, maybe the pain that our bodies bring us. We go on vacations to just escape it for a little bit. You won't have any pain to escape in heaven. So I hope there's a great golf course and it'll probably look like Trinity Pine or Whispering Pines. But if there is, there is, and if there's not, there's not. What we do know is that in heaven there will be no pain. So that need for belonging, connection is met. That need to seek pleasure and to avoid pain is met in heaven. But finally, you have a deep need to know your purpose. And in heaven, we will have a purpose. As I look back on my own life, the most difficult seasons have been those questions for me. What on earth am I here for? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? Is there any meaning behind any of this? And my suspicion is that you've been there at some point in your life too. Maybe you're in that now with your stage of life, with your job, with your career, with trying to figure out family, with trying to figure out marriage and having kids, grandkids, retirement. We're always constantly asking, what is my purpose in this season of my life? In heaven, you won't have to answer that question. Because your deep need to have a purpose and to know what you are doing matters will be fully and forever and completely and perfectly met. Because oddly enough, your purpose in heaven is your same purpose as it is on earth. And your purpose up there as it is down here is to worship God and to glorify and enjoy him forever. That's what you're going to experience up there. That's what you're supposed to experience down here. To worship God forever. Look what John says in Revelation chapter 14. He says, then I looked and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, that's Jesus, and with him the 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And then I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they were singing. They were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. Okay, so for a moment, let's set aside the weird stuff. Okay, the 144,000, the elders, the creatures. That's in 2 weeks. We're going to talk about the end times. Let's set those aside. What do we get a picture of here? All the people gathered around the throne of the Lamb, worshiping him, singing praises to him. So what are you gonna do in heaven? You're gonna worship. I laughed with a buddy earlier, a couple of weeks ago. I told him I was gonna preach about heaven. He said, you know, one of the great things about heaven is that the schedule is gonna be really easy. I'm like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow at 10? Worshiping Jesus. 10:15? Worshiping Jesus. Next Thursday, guess what? Worshiping Jesus. That's what we're gonna do forever. Now let me talk to the real lofters in the room. Does that sound boring to anybody? Okay, let's just be honest here, right? Like, I hope that the heavenly band is as good as Matthew and Sophia. I could listen to them for all eternity. But when I think of worship services in my mind, it's not usually this great, right? It's a pipe organ and it's stained glass. And then you have this picture of heaven that it's like your grandma's church forever. And there's like some weird naked angel babies with harps. And you're like, that sounds okay, but a little bit weird. And let's be honest, boring. Can we say that in church, that worshiping forever sounds a little boring? Okay, here's the thing. I can't change the words of Scripture. Words of Scripture are abundantly clear. We're going to worship for all eternity. I can't change that. But here's what I do want you to change and what I want to help change. Let's change our definition of worship. We've told you this before, but singing is not the only form of worship. It's maybe not even the primary form of worship. It's almost a misnomer that we say that there's worship before the preaching, because really everything we do is worship. So will we worship forever? Yes, but I believe that we can worship in a whole lot of different ways. You can worship God on the golf course. You can worship God driving down Lake Woodlands Drive. You can worship your job, some of you, or you can worship God, some of you, by looking at spreadsheets and doing those. There is a vast amount of ways that you can worship God. And Siri just found some on the web. There is a vast amount of ways. I keep telling myself, preach without the watch, Daniel, it's okay. So that leads to this question of, what are we gonna do all day? We're gonna worship. But there's also this question that I get asked, will we have jobs? Okay, some of you, there's some of you, I know probably most of us, wake up every morning so excited to go to our jobs. And we love every single minute of it, and we think that we work not nearly enough, and we are paid way too much, and we just love each and every day getting up and going to work, and especially our boss. They're just amazing. We love all of them. And so if I say that to those of you in the room like that, you're like, I don't want to work forever. But there might be some of you who maybe don't like your job all the time. I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand because your boss may be here and that would be a weird conversation tomorrow morning. But when you hear, if you don't love your job, hey, we might work forever, you're kind of like, ugh. Right? I was kind of thinking that heaven was gonna be like when I get to go away from my job, those moments that I get to go on vacation, I get to see the mountains, or I get to go to the beach with my virgin margarita. Like I was hoping that I wouldn't have to work, that I could instead sit back and rest from all my work. See, here's the deal about work in heaven. I believe that it might be there. I believe that it is there, but there's no toil. The reason you don't love your job is because of the toil, of the work politics, of the things that you have to do that you don't really like to do, of how underappreciated you are. All of that goes away, just the purpose of it. To build and to co-create with God, that still exists in heaven. There's a lot of scriptures that I think point to this truth, but one of them that I love is Isaiah 65, verse 21 through 23. Here's what the prophet says. He says in this picture of heaven, they shall build houses and inhabit them. They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit, and they shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall be the days of my people, and my chosen people shall long enjoy the work of their hands. They shall not labor in vain or bear children for calamity, for they shall be the offspring of the blessed of the Lord and their descendants with them. What does he say? He says, now in heaven, you're gonna build. You're gonna build great houses, but you're gonna live there. You're gonna plant vineyards. But instead of having to sell the fruit, you get to enjoy it. You will have a mission, you will have a purpose. Yes, you may even have a job in heaven, but it'll be all the best stuff of what is down here and none of the bad stuff. In heaven, your purpose will be to worship God, and we'll do that in a whole lot of ways. And here's what I can promise you, it ain't gonna be boring. You'll belong. You'll experience no pain. You will have that deep sense of purpose. It's a place you can get excited about. Now, here's the deal. I could land the plane here. Okay, if you've come here a while, you know when I get a little bit quiet, that's when we start to land the plane. I wanted to here, but I just felt the Spirit really working on me this week that I needed to give this last part here. And this, somebody that can hear my voice needs this. So here's the deal. I've just outlined for you how incredible heaven is. A place of no pain, a place of purpose, a place of connection and belonging. All your deep needs are met. And I've told you the way to get there, and it's through Jesus Christ. And you may hear there's a place of no pain, and you may be experiencing so much pain physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that you think, why wouldn't I want to go there now? If I know I'm going there one day, and I know it will end all the pain that I experience now, then why not try to go there now? And that may have been a hypothetical question for you before. That may have been a real question, a real live option for you. It might be, feel that way now. I talked to a man last night that was in that camp just 6-8 months ago. And if you're in that camp of saying, why shouldn't I just go there now? Know this, you're not the only one. In fact, somebody in our Bible felt the same way. The Apostle Paul wrote most of the books in the New Testament, was in this same spot, and we get kind of a glimpse into his soul. In Philippians 1:21, he says this, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I'm to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. Yet which I shall choose, earth or heaven, I cannot tell. He says, I'm hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus, because of my coming to you again. So notice here, Paul's wrestling with this question. He even saw heaven with his own eyes. If it's so amazing, why shouldn't I want to go there now? And I got to think for Paul, this was probably a live option. He had experienced real physical pain. He had been beaten. He had been flogged. He had been stoned. He had been imprisoned. He had been shipwrecked. He had experienced real physical pain. And then on top of that, let's talk about the emotional pain. He talks about it as a thorn in his side. I got to think that if you know the story of Paul, before he met Jesus, he was a persecutor of Christians. He literally killed people because they believed in Jesus. Could you imagine the guilt? Could you imagine the shame that he held in his gut? And so it's no wonder he says, if I know that I'm going to go be with Christ, do I do that or do I stay with you? And notice what Paul says to himself is what I want to tell you this morning. Paul says to himself, I'm going to stay here because my job isn't done yet. I'm going to stay here because I know that there's somebody that needs me. I'm gonna stay here because I know that there is somebody that loves me, and I'm gonna stay here because I know that God is not done with me yet. And because you are here, you have breath in your lungs, God is not done with you yet. Heaven is going to be a glorious finish line, a glorious reward for a difficult life and a job well done because of Jesus. That's in your future. It's not in your now. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Keep blessing others. There is somebody that you are called to bless. There are somebody that you are called to love, and the reward in heaven will be so sweet for that. Because here's what we know. Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. A place of belonging, a place of no pain. A place where our purpose to worship him forever is freely, fully, completely, and perfectly met. And he's given us the way. Let's pray together. God, we thank you that you have given us that way. We thank you that by your shed blood and by your victorious rise from the grave, you have paved the way and you have gone to prepare a place for us. So God, I pray for that person that can hear my voice this morning, or maybe weeks, months now from on YouTube or on a podcast. God, you know their heart. And so I pray for that person who is really wondering, am I gonna go to heaven? Have I done enough to accept Jesus? Have I repented correctly? God, I pray that you give that person your peace right now. I pray that you show them your love and your hope. You'll give them perfect peace, that through Jesus Christ, there is a place. And God, I want to pray for the person who can hear my voice that is struggling with that question of, I know I'm going to heaven, I know I'm going to go there one day, but why not make it sooner? God, give them your peace. Give them your purpose. Give them your hope, to show them people that they still need to bless, to show them people that they still need to care for, to show them people that love them and that they love as well. And God, for all of us, help us before we get to heaven to make this place called earth look a little bit more like it. We pray that in the name of the one who is the way and the truth and the life, the way that we get to heaven, Jesus Christ our Lord.